I recently, Catherine, my girlfriend and I, we recently just watched The Other Guys, which holds up, still good. And I was just, it was funny because, you know, if you haven't seen the movie, the end credits basically morph into this kind of high energy infographic about various financial crimes and the, you know, leading up to the Great Recession, set to Rage Against the Machine's cover of Maggie's Farm. And it seemed to me like that was like that end credits there really sort of like led you into this path of like doing movies about things that we like to laugh at to things that we love to be mad at. And I'm just wondering, like, was there a sort of road to Damascus moment for you? Like what like shifted your film output to like these more kind of like outwardly political films? Like, so in other words, what about The Other Guys radicalized you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure, you know, we've all been living in this country together for quite a while. And for a long time, I was trying to do stuff through comedy. You know, we were doing like Anchorman was about sexism and, you know, the news becoming pure entertainment. And we always had like something, like at least a little bit of a baseline that we were playing behind the absurd comedy that was a little bit about something. And I think with The Other Guys, it was just the financial collapse hit. My dad lost his house. The crimes were so flagrant. There was never any comeuppance. And I thought, you can't do a comedy about drug smugglers. Like, you just can't. That's not what the problem is. So we tried to do this kind of slightly absurdist comedy that was also like an allegory for the whole financial collapse. And we put all this work into it and really tried to craft the story. And then the movie came out and like no one cared. Like no one even noticed that we had done this. So when I was putting the credits in the end, I just go, fuck it, just make it naked. Like at least the credits will do it. And so, yeah, a bunch of people responded to it like, why did you do those credits in the end? I was like, no, the whole movie is about how the cops who are chasing drug dealers and destroying cars and car crashes are like a joke. And the guy who's actually like looking at bureaucratic paperwork is the one who's like really finding where the real crimes are. And like Wahlberg's character is always looking for drug smugglers and they ignore their union. And it turns out in the end that the union was being scammed. So yeah, that was kind of the first one where I started kind of being a little more overt, that I realized kind of this, you know, comedy mixed with some commentary wasn't enough. The world was just getting crazier.
Well, yeah, I mean, on that transition. Oh, wait, first of all, I thought this was true, and then I looked it up on my phone just to make sure. But do you know what a flock of falcons is called? A cast, like the cast of Saturday Night Live.
That is good. I like that.
It's nice, right? Yeah, they've all got their parts.
I like
some of them carry sketches. Some of them are more background players. Some of them, you know, do more character work. You get the idea.
Do you guys know what a collection of Catholic, more than 5 Catholic cardinals are called?
A registry list?
Yeah.
A lawsuit?
A cantaloupe. No.
Yeah. You actually got profiled by my buddy and my editor at Jacobin, Connor Kilpatrick. It was a great profile.
I remember that. He was awesome.
Yeah, he's great. He mentioned how divided the reviews were about Vice, even though everyone had to admit the performances were amazing. And you had this quote where you said, I just had this fractured feeling that the press was mad that I was stepping in their backyard. We would know nothing about that, obviously. But first of all, it's funny they got their hackles up about that and not like Anchorman 2. But I couldn't really pinpoint the animosity to that movie. I couldn't figure out, is the traditional media like territorial or like proprietary about like political content? Because it's not like they were talking about Cheney. They were maybe trying to forget that it happened. Do you think maybe it's because you've primarily worked in comedy and they're like, be funny, man? What do you think accounts for the reception?
I think there was some of that. Yeah. I mean, I and by the way, I'm not going to maintain it's a perfect movie. I mean, there were people I knew that I respected who weren't huge fans. I'm like, that's fair enough. But I thought some of the animosity was strange. Like, we got fact-checked by PolitiFact. and their fact check was wrong. Like, it was really weird. It was like, oh, wait, no, we researched this movie for 2 years. We know what we're talking about. And I remember they put out a fact check on it. I was like, well, that's incorrect. That's incorrect. And I remember like Joe Scarborough, who was a guy who was really for the Iraq War, had like a right-wing movie critic on who was like, I love the movie because I love Dick Cheney. I thought he was great in it. And Scarborough was laughing like, yeah, you're right. Like, we could use someone competent instead of Trump now. And there was like this whole idea of, you know, at least Cheney was competent. And I was like, this is like out of a Verhoeven movie.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there was some really strange kind of touchy nerves to that movie that went beyond just normal sort of, I liked the movie, I didn't like the movie, which is a whole separate discussion. There were some op-eds written from like journalists who were like rolling their eyes at like the characterization of W. Bush. And it's like, no, we researched that. We talked to people who were like, yeah, he was manipulated by Cheney. He was completely incompetent. That was, you know, based on real stuff. And that was also when I realized I was kind of stepping into an America where like stuff is really factionalized and really ugly out there. I really thought there'd be more of a rallying point around, you know, thank God this story was documented. You know, there's obviously great performances. We needed it to be documented. And nope, that was not the case.
Yeah, I kind of wondered if some of it wasn't just that, like, no one has actually gone back and reconciled that period of history in their head anyway. So it's really uncomfortable to look at it, even though it was not that long ago.
Yeah, I wondered that too. I think you're right a little bit with the comedy thing too. I think like the idea that the guy who did Step Brothers did this, I think a lot of people assumed it was slapdash, that we hadn't done all this research. I saw people act like, oh, you know, Lynn Cheney's father, you can't just say that. I was like, no, we researched that. We interviewed people from her town. We looked at the police reports. Like, so I think you're right. Some of the comedy thing hit in there. And then I think a lot of it was just talk about a subject no one really wants to go back over. People forget there was a lot of people supporting that war and a lot of journalists who kind of missed the boat on what was really going on. And it's not a very fun subject to go back to. I don't know. But yeah, we definitely got very strong reactions on both sides. Like some people like loved it. Some people hated it more than anything. It was quite an experience.
Well, you mentioned like the research you were doing when you were writing the screenplay for it. So like in the course of doing that, you must have sort of imbibed all kinds of cursed knowledge about Dick Cheney and his role in shaping the presidency of George W. Bush. So considering that, like, does it drive you fucking crazy to see W rehabilitated in the way he has now, sort of as a foil for Trump? I mean, like, just today he was speaking at John Lewis's funeral, and like you said, there's just this chorus of like, man, I remember when we had a competent Republican in office, and it's just like, what? But like, does this drive you as insane as it does me?
Yeah. Short answer.
Okay.
Yes.
All right,
good. I can't believe it. I mean, 1 million people died. You know, that war is going to end up costing $5 trillion. There's a whole generation of young men who have like head trauma and injuries from that war. It's kind of everything that's wrong with our country. We have more of like a slot machine sense of history than, you know, a narrative sense of history. It's like such a moment to moment kind of culture we've created. I wanted to ask you guys though, this must be strange for your show. Like, with everything that's happened, I was actually thinking like, oh my God, like Chapo's almost like Politico or The Hill now. Like all your opinions and everything you've been talking about is like moderate now. Like I was joking about like Jacobin is like USA Today now. Have you guys felt this at all? Like with what, you know, you used to be considered like extreme left wingers, and it's like, no, pretty much everything you're saying we could have used right now.
Well, Adam, we've always thought of ourselves as leaders.
No, I mean, I've always viewed the show more as like a sort of a contemporary Mallard Fillmore. You know, just bringing some political insight, but also some laughs.
Yeah, keeping it light.
Well, before I was on the cast, I said approvingly, this podcast is Howard Stern for the post-Cold War left, and initially people thought that was like an insult. But I only meant it as a compliment. But I don't know. I think it actually, I don't think anyone I don't think the media leads anything. I think they tend to sort of fill the spaces that are available to them. And we saw something emerging kind of during the Obama years that people realized is this all there is? And we always sort of have the same politics anyway. But it's like, I think the best part about our show is that it's lowbrow. And if you want to have any kind of like cultural component to a political project, which only happens when there's some kind of politics to orient it around, you can't start with culture first. You're going to need catalysts. You're going to need your highbrow. You're going to need Jacobin, your middlebrow, and you're going to need your Chapo, your lowbrow.
Well, God bless you. I'm still going to refer to you as the new Politico.